produce net energy from absolutely nowhere. It was a practical, a legal, and an educational constraint. But the root meaning, perpetuus motio, it simply means continuous motion. And that is, it's an undeniable description of celestial mechanics. The Earth-Moon-Ocean system is continuously driven by gravitational gradients, a time-varying tidal potential that constantly reshapes our fluid planet. It is absolutely not a closed thermodynamic unit. It contains these vast, pre-existing stores of rotational and orbital energy. The source material is very clear on this. We are not creating energy, we are building a transducer to intercept motion that is already inherent. And buoyancy, which is just a passive and universal consequence of gravity in a fluid, is the critical natural mediator here. It allows us to translate this existing gravitational energy, which expresses itself as pressure fluctuations and internal tides, into mechanical displacement, all without expending energy to create the primary motion itself. The motion is, for all intents and purposes, perpetual. We are simply, listening to the planet.
I fully appreciate the desire for semantic purity. I do. And I appreciate the recognition that this energy resource exists on a timescale that it far exceeds human civilization. However, attempting to resurrect a term as frankly, as culturally, and scientifically poisoned as perpetual motion introduces immediate conceptual danger. The validity of this system, which, let's be very clear, relies on advanced engineering at extreme depths, it has to stand or fall on its thermodynamic compliance. The source material is rigorous about this, confirming that thermodynamics is satisfied because any extraction, quote, merely adds an additional dissipation pathway to a system already dissipating energy. We know the system is slowing down, even if it's minutely. The Earth's rotation decelerates, the moon recedes. This confirms it is a process of energy dissipation, not some infinite source. When we use the term perpetual, we risk blurring that necessary distinction between intercepting an existing flow and claiming zero consumption, which was, the historical sin of those machines. Our focus has to be on the engineering required to manage and convert that existing, albeit vast flow.
I see the concern about public confusion. But let's try to move beyond the historical baggage for a moment and just focus on the conceptual utility. Restoring the meaning of perpetual actually strengthens our conceptual clarity. It forces us to acknowledge that gravity isn't static. It is a continuous, active interaction that drives the system autonomously. If we just call the motion continuous, we're putting it in the same conceptual bucket as, say, a river or a wind pattern, which are subject to all sorts of terrestrial interruptions and climatic variability. But this system is self-sustaining over astronomical timescales. Calling it perpetual allows us to frame this resource as a planetary service, one that's fundamentally reliable and autonomous. And that differentiates it completely from every other energy source. I think that framework is vital for valuing the resource accurately against, intermittent sources like solar or wind.
I find that framing unhelpful for the actual task at hand, which is building an operational system. Engineers, and maybe more critically, the investors you'd need to fund deep-sea infrastructure. They don't base decisions on the historical root of Latin phrases. They need technical precision, and that precision demands we state clearly, the energy is derived from Earth's vast rotational and orbital reservoir. It's mediated through gravity and the ocean, and we are just intercepting existing dissipation. If we use the term perpetual, we immediately create this conceptual hurdle, a scientific paradox, that engineers then have to spend time disproving before they can even get back to the design phase. We have to use language that emphasizes rigor. This is a high-flow, low-dissipation system. The moment we use a term associated with impossible machines, we undermine the seriousness of the entire proposal.
But the sheer scale justifies the term. The energy extraction is described as being, and I'm quoting here, lost in the noise of natural variability. For all practical, civilizational, and ecological purposes, this flow is effectively perpetual. It existed long before human memory, and it will persist long after. We are talking about energy flows that operate on geological timescales. So why should we constrain our terminology to satisfy the concerns of, the 17th century patent office? Accepting the term perpetual is accepting the resource's inherent reliability.
Okay, look, If we accept that the resource is reliable and vast, which, for the record, I do, then the argument shifts entirely to the mechanical challenge. And this brings us squarely to the efficacy of buoyancy as a translator of this gravitational motion. This is where the concept moves from elegant physics to brutal engineering reality.
And I contend buoyancy is the perfect, elegant solution, precisely because it is passive.
Passive in theory, perhaps, but deeply, deeply complex in deployment. Buoyancy as a force, yes, it's the differential response of materials to gravity in a fluid. Absolutely. But we are not talking about simple surface bobs here. We are discussing the translation of motion in the deep sea, at depths where surface disturbances are negligible. The crucial motion is